So on this webinar workshop, we have myself. My name is Leah Sloan. I'm the Director of Professional Development here at CodeHS. I have with me Lori Goldade. She is our PD specialist. She's waving right now. And we have Claudia Craven. She is our Customer Experience Manager. We also have in the background Claire Slingner. She is our Marketing Manager, Director, and the three of us, Leah, Claudia, myself, and Claire, will be supporting on the back end. And Lori will be primarily leading this workshop for you today. So a little bit of background on Zoom if you've not used it or if it's been a little while since you've used it. You can, unlike a typical webinar, unmute and mute yourself. You can also stop and start your video, but we ask that you not unmute, especially while Lori is presenting, because it creates a weird background feed and it's not a pleasant sound to hear. There may be different points where she may ask you to unmute yourselves and answer a question, or she may just ask you to put the answer into the chat area. With that said, the chat is also at the bottom of your Zoom window where you can place answers to questions and information and so forth. There is also a participant button. So if you click that little participant button, we have some different features. So you can raise your hand, you can answer yes or no to certain questions, and this is a great way to get feedback from you as a group. All of these tools are available in Zoom or also on different web conferencing platforms. They may vary a little bit, but there are different ways that you can use these with students as well. We'll be modeling that throughout the session today. So you can use these same techniques with students when you're working with a big group and teaching them virtually as well. So I want to test one of the features out real quickly. With the participants, the question I'm going to have you do yes or no to is, have you used CodeHS before? And just click the yes green button if you have, and the no little icon there if you have not used CodeHS before. And then we'll be able to see that in the participants panel. I'll give you a few seconds to do that. Okay, so far I'm seeing a mix, maybe about a 50-50 split, maybe a few extras that have used CodeHS. No worries, that's why you're here, to learn a little bit about the platform and some of the student materials. So thank you for joining us. We also have a parking lot document, and this document is perfect. It's just a Google Doc you're all going to be able to write into. It is perfect for any off-topic questions. So what Lori is going to do today, because we only have maybe 45 minutes with you, she is going to teach a student lesson. So you're going to experience the lesson from a student perspective. And then she's going to do a debrief about blended and virtual teaching strategies after that lesson. So if there are questions you have that are completely unrelated to that, like, you know, how do I find out about Pro, or, hey, I want to know more about APCSP, which will not be related to this workshop, please put those questions on the blended questions parking lot doc. Don't put them in the chat because we don't want to lose them. The chat area can fill up quickly and we don't want to lose your questions. And so the agenda for today is just really quick welcome and introductions, which we've already done. We're going to have you enroll in a demo section so that you can actually participate in the activities with us today. The lesson we'll be going through is the second lesson in our Intro to Computer Science course with JavaScript, so it's more basic Carol. We'll get into that. And then there will be a brief debrief about the model lesson and talking about blended and virtual teaching strategies. All right, so the first thing we want to do right out of the gate is make sure that you have accounts with CodeHS so you're able to participate in the activities today. So to create a CodeHS account, you go to codehs.com/signup/teacher. We'll also put this into the chat area as well. And this will allow you to sign up for a teacher account. The cool thing is you also get a student view on courses and things like that too. So you have a teacher account, and then you'll be able to participate in any course on our site as a student as well. And that's what will allow you to get into the demo course we're going to be using. So I'll give about a minute or so for you to sign up for account if you've not done that. If you have account issues, Please also put those in the parking lot dock and not in the chat area. We don't want those to get lost as well. All right. Once you have a CodeHS account, or you've already logged into your CodeHS account, you can copy this link. This will take you to our demo course. We'll toss this link into the chat area. And this, you can put it into a fresh browser window and it will automatically, or should automatically, open up a prompt that asks for the course ID. The course ID is always the last 5 characters at the end of the URL. So in this case, EB19D. And you just enter that in, and then you will be loaded into the demo course. We'll also be watching on the back end to see that you get into that demo course. But again, if you have any issues getting into the demo course, put that in the parking lot dock and not in the chat area, please. With that said, if you don't get into the demo course because our time is so compressed, don't panic. You can still absolutely participate along. We will also provide links that will take you directly to the exercise. So don't worry if you don't actually get into the course. You can still definitely watch along and learn a lot of tips and tricks on how to use CodeHS and experience it from the student perspective. So don't panic if that becomes a hurdle for you. Stick with us and you'll still get a lot out of the workshop. All right, so at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Lori, our PD specialist, and she's going to go through the more basic Carol lesson and the debrief. But again, we're thankful that you're here with us today, and we hope this is a helpful session and getting you started in using CodeHS.
Hello, everybody. Thanks, Leah, and thanks, Claudia and Claire, for all of your help today. I'm Lori. I'm the PD specialist here at CodeHS. And just a little bit about me, and actually I'm just glancing through the participants list and I think I recognize a few of these names, so I am really excited to see some familiar names, whether we've emailed or something. Maybe our paths have crossed somewhere else this summer, but welcome everybody. Couple quick things about me. Prior to working at CodeHS, I actually worked in K-12 for about 20 years as the technology coordinator for my district, a small district in South Dakota. And about 10 of those years were spent also in the high school computer science classroom. And I used CodeHS for a significant amount of those years, since about 2014 until just about 2019. And so I'm very familiar with CodeHS and actually love talking to teachers about what you can do here. And so what we're going to be doing today is we are actually going to go through a sample lesson in CodeHS. And this is going to be from the Intro to Computer Science and JavaScript course. And it's going to be focused on the second lesson in that course, and it's more basic Carol. So we're going to be taking a look at this, not to learn the material here, but we want you all to experience the platform from a student perspective and to see what the various components are in a CodeHS lesson plan. There's going to be several different student-facing pieces that your students will see when they first get into the courses. And then we're going to show you some other things you can bring in as well. One of the things we really want to emphasize is that CodeHS is a comprehensive blended platform for bringing computer science and programming to your school districts. And so what we want to show you today is how you can use all of those components and then maybe do a little bit of tweaking and bringing your own perspective as the teacher to this blended learning platform. We know you're all faced with a lot of challenges as we get into this school year, and so hopefully we can give you some ideas about how you can use this platform to streamline your routines and really have a great year with your students, no matter how you're meeting with them. So we're going to go ahead and start this. So I want to give us a quick look at how this is going to be organized and where we're going to be in the CodeHS section. So I noticed that some of you have not used CodeHS before. So if you're a little bit unsure of where you're at, or if you haven't been able to enroll in the demo course, that's totally okay. You can simply follow along, and we can and just get a sense of how everything works. If you are in the demo course, however, and it looks like several of you have gotten in, I do want to show you a little bit. I'm going to pull another window. Oh, actually, you know what? I don't need to. Maybe I can grab this one. There we go. They're a little bit more streamlined. As long as those Zoom controls stay out of my way, we'll be good. So this is what the course is going to look like for you as a student. So once you enroll in Teaching in a Blended Setting, August 2020, on our last day of August 2020, can you believe it? You are going to see a list of all of the modules and lessons that are in this course. So we've actually added the entire Intro to JS course in this. And what you're going to find is that a lot of these other exercises might be locked for you. And so those will actually open up around, maybe in a couple hours today, I think is when I set them to open. But I wanted to demo a little bit about how you can use some access controls in your CodeHS class. And so if you can't get to everything, that's okay. I didn't want you to. I wanted you to see how those would open up a little bit later. So where we're going to be starting is in this very first module. So if we're at the top of this page, the student view, what I'm going to see is our first module, Programming with Carol. And below that, when I expand it, if it's minimized, you might need to click that little plus sign. You're going to see each lesson that's in this module. Within each lesson, we can expand that, and I can see every activity that's going to be in the module as well. And this is going to be a very familiar pattern. This is what you're going to see throughout all of the CodeHS courses. And so we have the lesson and the activities. We're going to start with more basic Carol. And all of these should be appearing in gray because we haven't opened anything yet. And we'll be going through the video, the example, and a couple of exercises and talking about each of these components. These are the student-facing components. So again, this is where we're going to be starting at today. In the slides, which you all have access to, if you jump into that Start Here doc, and I think Leah and I think Claudia's posted that, Claire's posted that, a few people posted the Start Here doc in the chat, so you should be able to scroll through that and find that link. And you will see I've highlighted the various activities that we're actually going to be looking at. Okay, so a little bit of information before we get started with this lesson that I'll be teaching you today. So this is the second lesson. The very first lesson in this course is Intro to Carol, and it's just the basic Carol commands to get students started with things. And so what students would have learned in that first lesson is they should start to become familiar with the CodeHS navigation and icons. And that's definitely something that students will pick up on pretty quickly, as will you if you've never used CodeHS before. You'll start to learn what all these various icons mean, and you'll especially start to see some of those colors happen once you start to click through here. Once we actually click into the video or the example, for instance, you're going to see these activity bubbles turn yellow. And that'll indicate that you've started an activity. So students will start to become familiar with that. Students will also begin to understand how to type Carol commands with the proper syntax. Students will also start to get an understanding of the step-by-step execution of Carol commands. And those commands for that, sorry about that, went a little bit too crazy, tried to scroll. Those commands that they would have learned in that very first lesson are move, turn left, click ball, and take ball. I'm sure for those of you who have used CodeHS before, that's something that's very familiar to you. And if it's not familiar, that's okay. You don't need to know any of that stuff. That's why I'm throwing it into this prior knowledge slide. All right. So the objectives for the more basic Carol lesson. So that's the lesson that we're going into. For this lesson, students are going to learn to start identifying the direction that Carol is facing. That can actually be a pretty tricky thing if you've never taught this. It's a little bit tricky for some students to determine the direction that Carol is facing, but it becomes even more tricky to learn how to determine what direction Carol should be facing after executing a series of commands. And so they're going to start to get a better understanding of that with this basic Carol lesson. And they're also going to get a better idea of Carol's world and what makes up Carol's world. Part of that world is going to be street and avenue terminology to talk about the rows and the columns. So with that, I'm going to get us started into our lesson. So I'm taking away Lori, and I'm going to become Ms. G for this one. So I'm going to take us through this lesson as if you're my students, and I would love for all of you to participate as we go through this. That would be phenomenal for you to get a full experience. All right, good afternoon, class. I think it's afternoon for many of us. Some of us it's morning yet, but that's okay. Or it feels like morning, right? So I want to welcome you all to class again. I'm really happy to see you. I'm so glad we have so many joining us. Just taking a look at everybody who's in our room today. Wow, we have so many. That's so cool. Oh, I see some more names. I know, yay. So welcome everybody. So we're going to get started. So remember last time we got to meet, and we were meeting virtually then too. I can hardly wait till I get to see you all in person again, but at least I get to see you here. So when we met last time, we started working with the CodeHS platform, and we're going to start to, we started to get familiar with a few things. First of all, we met a dog named Carol, and we started learning about how to give Carol some commands. So Carol is really going to help us learn how to program. And so what I want us to start with today, before we even get into CodeHS, I want you to browse out to codehs.com/commands. And I would love for you to tell me which commands you remember that Carol can use or that Carol knows. So I'm just going to, and actually I might just do this over here real quick. We'll move that little guy out of the way. There we go. codehs.com/ don't even remember my own link, commands, very simple. codehs.com/commands. This is going to take you out to a Jamboard. Now, I don't know if I don't think we've used a Jamboard in our class before, and I don't know if you've used it with some of your other teachers, so I wanted to show you this real quickly. A Jamboard is a really cool Google thing that I like to use a lot because I don't have a lot of money and I have to pay for Padlets, so I like to use Jamboard sometimes, so you're going to see this. I'm going to give you a quick idea of what to do if you're not familiar with it. So I just used a sticky post-it note here for what commands does Carol know. To list some of your commands, come over here to the left side, click the sticky note, and it's going to pop up on your screen, and you can tell me right on this sticky note what commands Carol knows. So I'm going to give you all just a second to go ahead and tell me some of that. This little Zoom window out of the way again. There we go. We'll see if anybody wants to be brave and tell me some commands. Oh, interesting. We're getting a whole bunch of them. And you can drag those around if you like. I can go ahead and move some of those too. Perfect. Oh, yep, we can change colors. Because what fun would it be if we couldn't change colors on those? Yeah, you can sure move Carol. Yeah. Oh, interesting. So I'm seeing turn left. I see turn right. That's interesting. Have we been able to make Carol turn right yet? We're pretty early on. Let's keep that one in mind because we're going to come back to these commands in a little bit at the end of our lesson. Cool. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and let you keep populating that if you like. I'm going to we'll leave it there so we can click back into it. So kind of a cool thing, we're going to use Jamboards a lot this year because they're super easy. They're kind of fun. You might be making your own Jamboards too. We'll see. So yeah, we wanted to remind ourselves about some of those commands that Carol uses. So today, we're going to learn more about some of those commands, but we're also going to learn more about Carol's world, and we're going to get some more practice with commands. So we're going to start with the video in the more basic Carol lesson. But rather than have everybody watch it on their own, I'm going to go ahead and play that for us. So let me get into my window. Let me get that started. Sometimes this is a little bit cranky for me because of Zoom, so bear with me for 1 second. See what happens.
Hi, in this video, we're going to learn a little bit more about Carol and write our second Carol program together. So first, let's start off by revisiting Carol's world. There are a few more parts to Carol's world that we'll learn about in this video. First are the walls. The walls are represented by lines that Carol cannot move through. Some of these lines make up the border of the world, and some of these lines are inside on the grid. We also want to be able to refer to Carol's position. Carol is usually at a certain row and column. The rows are also referred to as streets and run horizontally. Here, I've highlighted 5th Street. The columns are also referred to as avenues and run vertically. Here, I've highlighted 8th Avenue. Something that's important to understand when programming in Carol is which direction Carol is facing. So Carol can face one of the 4 compass directions: north, east, south, or west, and looks a bit different when facing each direction. And when you're programming in Carol, it's important to try and understand Carol's sense of direction. You have to imagine that you're facing the direction that Carol is and think, which way would you move if you're going forward? Or which way would you turn if you're turning to the left? So let's take an example of turning left. On the left, Carol is facing east. And then when we give him the turn left command, he rotates such that now he's facing north. Let's look at another example. If Carol is facing north, then when he turns to his left, he'll then be facing west. So now, let's use this to go write our second Carol program.
Okay, so we're going to stop there for a minute. And actually, we're going to stop there for this video for today. If you want to finish watching it, you can do that after we're out of class today. But let's review a couple of things. And I would like you to put this in chat if you know the answers to any of these. So first of all, what are some of the things that make up Carol's world? What is Carol's world made up of? Go ahead and put that into chat. Walls, yep. Okay, we've got some walls. Anything else? Streets and avenues, yeah, a grid. Exactly, streets, avenues, and walls. Yep, exactly. So the walls can be that border, but remember, we also saw that the walls can also occur inside of Carol's world, and definitely that grid. And we have to keep in mind the streets and avenues as well. Which way does street run? Is it a row or a column? It's a row, that's right. So the columns are the avenues. Yep, there are some tennis balls in there as well. Excellent, I'm getting some really good answers. Thank you for watching that closely. I know sometimes it's tough when we're on Zoom, but we'll all get more used to this as we go. And let's see. Oh, and we're going to be learning about how to have Carol navigate our world. That sometimes takes a little bit of practice. I know we're all pretty good with our directions, but sometimes we have to predict which way Carol's going to turn. So we're going to get a little bit of practice with that today. All right, so let's go ahead. I'm going to get into the next activity. Actually, the next activity is a quiz, and we're not doing the activity or the quiz today. It's taking its time because Ms. G's on Zoom, so my internet's crawling. I might just stop my video for just a second. That usually speeds it up. There we go. The second I stop it, there it goes. Okay, so I'm going to get us past the quiz, and this is at the point where all of you can join me now. I would like you all to come with me and go into the example called tennis ball square. If you are following me along in this area already, it's the 3rd circle. You can click on the circle on the bottom to get to it. There we go. All right, I'm going to try to put my face back on the screen again. There we go. Okay, so this is where we're at, and I believe there is a link out there. If anybody's lost and you're in the slides, there's a link there. Otherwise, somebody will throw that into the chat for us in case you need the link for tennis ball square. So let's take a quick look and just remind ourselves what we're going to see in the examples. Now, first of all, remember the examples are that piece of code that just runs for us. That's where we can go to actually see what the lesson just taught us. And so that's going to be an excellent place for you to go to see how something runs from that lesson that we just saw. That's going to be even more important for us this year because I don't get to be with you every day. I don't get to see you physically in the classroom, and we don't get to see our classmates every day either. And so this is going to be very important for you to think about where this example is so you can go out and see how that code works. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. Remember, we have our code here in the middle in the code editor. I'm going to click on Run on the right side. And now I can see what the code does. All right. So Carol put down 4 tennis balls. And it tells me I did a nice job. I did nothing though, right? It's just the example. Keep in mind, Ms. G is not going to be grading the examples. These are for you to take a look at when we're not together. Couple of reminders about the code editor, because I know some of us are really new to CodeHS. If we take a look on the left-hand side, this will show me what the result world is going to look like. So this is what the world looks like after the code runs, if we don't have any errors in it. Now we are pretty new to this, and it's okay if we forget how to write these commands. Let me make these commands just a little bit bigger. I'm gonna make sure you all see how to do this. If you click on this very tiny little gear setting, it says change editor settings, I can change the size of my font. There we go. So that way, there's a few other things I can do there too, but I can change that size there. So that's really handy for us to know that. We can make that font size bigger. So if we forget how to write some of these commands, I can look down in the quick docs and see that. I'm gonna just show you one more time where that gear was, because it is small. And I can tell you Ms. G has lost that gear a number of times. I have to look for it. It's in the code editor at the top left corner, right next to the name of the program, right there. And actually, just a side note, you can find that throughout CodeHS in many other areas too. If you're looking for settings, watch for that gear. Okay, back to our lesson, kids. So here's the quick docs on the left-hand side in that menu on the left. So this is going to give me just that quick look at, oh yeah, that's how I write that. That's how you do turn left. I need an opening and a closing parenthesis and a semicolon. So you can see that in the quick docs, and you can also see that in Docs tab on the right side of the screen too. So I've got Run Code, Example, Docs right up here. And so that gives me an idea of those commands as well. Okay, so we've got this code written for us, and that's great and all, but I want to give us a little challenge. I want all of you to now add to this code, and I want you to write additional code that has Carol pick up the balls. So after Carol puts down all of those tennis balls, write more code that has Carol pick up those tennis balls. I'm going to give you just a few seconds to do that. It's going to be pretty short. Give it a try. And when you're done with that, if you get done with it before I say time, I'd love for you to click the yes in the participants pane so I can see how many people are done. I'm going to take a look on my side as well. I see a couple of people are done. Awesome. So sometimes when I have a little bit more time, I know we didn't have quite as long of a class period today. And so, but something that we will do in the future when we meet is I can go ahead and click into everybody's student accounts, and I can actually display your code that you've written, and we can all take a look at that. And sometimes we can work on some code together that way. So we'll definitely be doing that often in our classes. I'm just gonna take a quick peek here at how many more yeses I have. I have a few, awesome. I know I'm not giving you much time, so way to go, those of you who are able to get that done. That's awesome. Yep, and I definitely see some progress on my side too. So good job, everybody. So often, what we will do is we will share, and I'll share my screen, so that way we can see the code that you're working on. And eventually what we can also do is you'll be able to share your screen with the class, and we can all work together on your code. So excellent work. Okay. So I'm going to let you all just think about that. And we're going to leave that as a challenge. I'm not going to give you the answer right here. Usually we take some time and go through it in class, but we're going to keep on moving for today. So a couple of things about how to continue, because I want to make sure we all see how to do this, and just remind everybody, there's a few ways to navigate this. You can click, once you finish the exercise or the activity, you can click continue. And that's going to be a really good way to do it, because if you're finished, that's going to submit it so I can see it's done. And I can either go in and grade it, or an auto grader will grade it for you. And so you can click continue or submit to do that. You can also, if you're stuck and you think, oh, I don't get it, I can't get past this, another way to do that, so you don't have to sit and wait for Ms. G to help you or for another classmate to help you, you can actually come down to the very bottom of the screen on these little activity bubbles, and I can click on these to get through these as well. So if I get stuck on one of these, on Make a Tower, for instance, and I can't get through it, and it won't let me click submit because I haven't answered the question right, or I haven't written the code correctly, I can come down here and click on this to get to the next one. So keep in mind, you never have to be stuck on anything. You can continue on to the next one. And I think that's really important for students to know, so tuck that one away and make sure that's something that you share with your kids. All right, so we're gonna go into Make a Tower now. Shrink that back down so we can see the screen a little bit better. And totally erasing that code because we don't want that there. I'm going to actually, I don't think this one had any starter code. We'll make sure. Nope, no starter code. So this is the screen that you are all going to be seeing. Just an empty code editor. Might feel a little daunting because it's kind of like writing an essay. I know sometimes, and you all remember that Ms. G used to be an English teacher, and it's even daunting for me when I pull up a brand new screen and I have to start typing things. It can feel that way here too. So what we need to do here is take a look at that exercise, first of all, and if we breezed past that pop-up and we think, well, what was the exercise? Remember, there's a couple of places we can go to see that. I can see that by looking in the left-hand pane and see the result world. I can see, okay, Carol needs to end up with this tower. So he's gonna build a tower of tennis balls, which is impressive for a dog, I think. I don't think my dog would do that. Now, if I wanna see the actual exercise, I can click on Show Exercise in the left pane. And I can read it here. I can see the starting world and the ending world. And this is going to be especially important once we get into more complex programs, if you want to see the exercise, maybe there's going to be multiple steps to it. You can come over to the right side and click on Assignment. When you click on Assignment, you're going to see this exercise here. And now I can have that up and right next to my code editor as I write my code, so I can see all those steps, okay? I'm gonna go back and click on Run Code. So what I'd like everybody to do now, and just because we're getting so short on time already, I knew our class period would go so fast today, we're gonna take just a few minutes to start working through Make a Tower. And I would like you all to see if you can write the code that will make Carol end up in this position at the end. If you get finished with Make a Tower, please submit and continue that one. And I'd like you to move on to Pyramid of Carol. I have a feeling I have a little bit of code there too, so we'll erase that. So that's your task for the next minute at best. We're only going to take a little bit of time. I want you to start on Make a Tower. Go ahead and try to complete that, and then move into Pyramid of Carol. Just as a side note, what we will be doing, and we'll talk about this one in the debrief as well, but what we'll usually be doing in class as we start to do some of these exercises, when we have a full class period, we'll definitely be putting you into some breakout rooms with your classmates. So you'll be able to work on these still individually, but you'll have your classmates. We're going to do a lot of peer programming. And that's going to be one of the ways that we do this, since we can't meet all together and face-to-face this year. And so we're going to be doing a lot of breakout rooms. The really cool thing about breakout rooms is that I can actually jump into the breakout rooms to see how you're doing and work with you. And so I'm not just sending you off into a room by yourself. Ms. G will be popping out there with you when we do those. So wanted to mention that. So remember, for the exercises, these are both starting with an empty code editor. There will be no starter code for this. You'll have to start thinking about, well, what do I want Carol to do first? What's the very first step? I would start very slowly if I were you. I would think about, well, what's the first thing? If Carol's right here, and I need him to end up here, the very first step is I need him to at least move. So start with that and see if you can make Carol move, and then think about the next thing to try. Just a few more seconds. Just taking a quick look on my side. See where we're at. Excellent. I see some people are working. Perfect. We're getting some progress showing. Cool, everybody. Great job. Okay, I wanted to show just one other thing, maybe a couple other things while you're working on this. So sometimes when you start writing some code, one of the things, and I mentioned this before, but make sure to think very incrementally. That means in very small steps. We don't want to think, well, let's see, I got to get Carol from here up to here, and how do I do that? Because that'll make us panic a little bit. We need to think about what's just that first step. And so when I decide, maybe I just need to make a move. Well, first of all, I want to make sure that I'm writing this correctly. So if I write one line of code, I want to run it. Now it's going to say, oops, there should be a ball here and here and here. But remember, I'm just testing it right now. It's okay if I'm getting those messages because I'm not done, right? And then I can decide from there, well, what's my second line of code? Okay, I'm making them go in the right direction, and I can keep doing this. So one of the reasons that I emphasize this a lot is because, again, our programs are gonna get tough. And it's going to be a lot easier to find our mistakes if we're doing things in small pieces. And I know every year a lot of students will complain to me about why I want you to do that. It's going to be a lot more helpful in the long run. So a couple other things, or one other thing that I wanted to show you is sometimes when we get really far into a program and it gets tougher, and it will get tougher, I promise, it's going to get harder. One of the things you want to remember is if you click on more, you can go to a history section. And in that history section, you're going to see a timestamp of everything you've tried in that program. See how many things I've tried here? Now, let's say I've tried so many things and I just have a big mess and I don't even know what to try next. Sometimes the best thing to do is to click reset code. When you click reset code at the very bottom of your history list, it takes you all the way back to the beginning. So if there was starter code there, you would get that back. In this case, there was no starter code, so I just get an empty code editor. That's a tough thing for students to do sometimes, to admit that, wow, I have all this code and I'm just going to start over again. Sometimes that's the best way to do it. Sometimes I'll copy and paste that code somewhere else. Now, one other thing that I want to show you before we end class for today and do a quick exit ticket is in this More tab, you're also going to see a conversation section. Okay, so again, More, That a little bigger if I can. Well, that one's being a little cranky. So it's in the top right corner, more, and then conversation. When we get to this area, this is where you can send me a message. Any message that you write here is going to come to your teacher. And so if you send me a message here, I will get that message. And notice sometimes, well, I will respond to you all the time, but you might even get a voice message from me. And that's a new feature, so we'll see how that works. But that's coming out pretty soon if you don't see that yet. So you'll be able to send me a message here, and I will send you a message back. And I'll be able to see your code, so you don't have to copy and paste it. You don't have to do any of that, but you will get the message from me here, okay? Let's see. I'm gonna do this real quick just so I don't have to go through and write everything. And this is also just a good quick thing to show. There is a solution here, not for you guys, but for the teacher. That's where I can grab a solution real quick. Somebody was asking about that, so I will pop that solution in here. And if this is moving too slow for me, I can speed it up. I can slow it way down. And another really cool troubleshooting thing, let me reset it, is that I can actually step through this code to see exactly what each line of code does. So this is going to be a good thing for you to keep in mind too. Cool. Awesome. Somebody else posted that in chat. Thank you. That's perfect. If you just created, and just as a side note, if you just created an account today with CodeHS, it'll take a little bit before you're verified as a teacher. But just be patient. We'll get you verified so you get the solutions as well. Perfect. Yes, and I will answer that right here since we're right in this area. Just again, there's going to be a few places where teachers can get solutions. This is going to be one of the areas. I think this is if you are on the Pro plan. I don't know if you can get to the solution from here from free. Actually, I think maybe you can, now that I say that. I don't totally remember about that. But this is where I can see the solution, one of the places, and then I'll give you just another quick idea about where the solutions are, because you get solutions on either plan. Toolbox, resources. You can search, you can get them here as well. Solution references, okay? Solution references, that is available for every teacher, free or pro. So you get all of the courses and all of the solutions, okay? All right. Okay, so let's jump back into our slideshow. So we did tennis ball square, and you had a challenge to see if you can make Carol pick up all the tennis balls. I'm not going to show you the answer to that right now. That was my own challenge that I made up, by the way. And then we started on make a tower and pyramid of Carol. So this one, I mentioned that we would usually use breakout rooms. I'm going to use breakout rooms often when we do coding because it's a really nice way just to do some peer programming and bounce our ideas off of our classmates as well. So we do have an exit ticket, and it's codehs.com/carolcommands. And this one's going to be a Padlet. I'm going to go out to it real quick and I'll go back to that. So on this Padlet, what I'd like you to tell me about, I'll jump back here so you can see that. And if you've got your phone handy, you can get to it from your phone too by scanning that QR code. I'd like you to tell me, are there any commands you wish Carol knew? Love for you to take a second to go out and tell me that. Just because I feel like we get some really cool ideas sometimes, and I'd love to see those. I wish Carol could bark. That would be cool. Or maybe dance. I think dance would be great. I've taught a couple of dogs how to dance. It was not easy, but they did it. So I'll give you, you can go out and take a look at that. And again, this one's just a Padlet. Sometimes Ms. G likes to use Padlets too. And then I reuse them. Cool. Change color. I hear that one so often. I love that one. Yep. Wish Carol could shake. Cool. Awesome. Good job, everybody. All right. Nice work today. Thank you so much. So I've listed some of the, well, all of the commands that we know so far. So that's in our slide deck for today. And we'll talk more about where we're going to take some notes for class. There's going to be an area in the platform where you can do that, and some other areas that we can collect this information. We also started learning some vocabulary, and so I've listed that in this slide deck too. All right, everybody, thank you so much for going through that sample lesson with me. So we have about 15-ish minutes, that's being liberal, to go through a quick debrief on this lesson. So this is where I want us all to really think about the various components that we saw as students. Now, I know many of you, I'm just looking at those names, and I know many of you have been in workshops before and have some accounts, but this is always a good thing to think about, okay, what are those components that we used in this CodeHS lesson? And how did we use those in this particular lesson? And so in this one, for instance, we use the video and slides, the example, and the exercises for our student-facing lesson, the student-facing part of the lesson. This is the part that the students saw. And so every single CodeHS lesson is going to come with those components. So you are going to see those in every lesson that you do, and in every course in some way. There's always going to be some kind of content delivery, and that's going to be in the video and slides. If it's a course that's maybe does not have a programming element, like maybe you're going through the cybersecurity course, or World of Computing? No, Computing Ideas. I'm getting them all mixed up now. But if you're going through one of the courses that has some writing, you might also see some other exercises like free response, or maybe some simulations as well. But you're going to see basically a video and slides, possibly some kind of example or simulation, and then some kind of exercise. And also the part that we skipped was the quiz. There's always going to be a video check-in quiz or the slide check-in quiz, and those are going to be very short. Sometimes just one question, sometimes just two. Sometimes it'll be a little bit longer. Like in the AP classes, sometimes those are a little longer, but those are generally just a quick check-in to see how you're doing on the video or the slides. Then we have some of the other pieces that were added into this, and these are things that come on the lesson plans. So for the lesson plans, everybody will see at least the first, I believe it's five lesson plans or so for one of the courses. But if you are a pro teacher, you'll get a lesson plan for every single lesson that's out there. Let me see if I can pull this up real quick, and I'll give you an idea of what's here. Because it's great, even for free teachers, and I can tell you this, when I was using CodeHS, I never used the pro version. I was never one of the people that had gotten that approved at my school. And so I used it as a free teacher from 2014 until I left the classroom just before 2019. And so I absolutely was able to bring so many programming classes to my students, and even online programming classes. I put these online. I absolutely went completely virtual with many of them. So I wanted to give you an idea of what you're going to see in these lesson plans, because you can certainly take some of these first ones and template these if you are a free teacher and use them in that way. So the lesson plans are where I find things like discussion questions and offline handouts if those are available for a lesson. Not all the lessons have offline handouts, but that can be a really phenomenal piece to use if your students have less maybe internet access, or just another way to scaffold or provide support for students who might need additional support there. So again, when we think about those student-facing components, it's the video and slides, and so that's our content. That's our content that we're going to deliver to our kids. So when we're thinking about how we can do this for our students, especially if we're meeting virtually, we don't have to just watch videos. We can certainly use the slides, because you'll have access to the slides that are used in the video as well. You can also do something similar to what I did, where we watched it together in class. We watched the video and then I stopped it. We didn't finish watching it. And then I asked some questions to see is everybody, listening? Is everybody engaged in this? And you can also use these slides for direct instruction as well. That's something that I've seen many teachers do, is just pull up the slides and go through them on their own without the use of the video. The examples are an awesome way to make sure that students can see. They've got a way to see how that code runs. So definitely focus on those examples as being exemplar programs. And I also like to take those and add a coding challenge to them as well. Exercises are going to be really where you're going to see how students are able to apply that knowledge that they're getting in the video and the slides. And so think about various ways to do those. If you're going to be virtual this year, and I noticed some of you were telling me that you've started school and you're face-to-face, some of you are virtual. This can be done in either way. You can absolutely use pair programming if you're face-to-face, of course. You can use peer programming. And if you're virtual, I hope that you can use breakout rooms, because those are a phenomenal way to actually collaborate with other students. So some of the things in the lesson plans, again, and I linked this lesson plan here, you can actually get the bell ringers and exit tickets from the lesson plan. And then I chose to actually bring in something from the toolbox that I would use. I love Jamboard. And one of the reasons I love Google Jamboard is because it's free and Padlet is not. And so that's one of the reasons I use that. And I like to use things that I can make sure that I'm going to see a quick response from all my students, hopefully all of my students, because I want to engage my students quickly when we get into a class, whether it's face-to-face or virtual. And so I'm going to grab one of these things where they automatically come to class, they're going to be used to it, and they need to jump into this and get engaged in the lesson right away. And I can get that quick idea of where my students are at. Is there something, I'm doing a quick formative assessment with this. Is there something that I missed or something that I needed to teach in a different way in the prior lesson? So these can be really important. So I definitely encourage you to use those. And again, there's also some offline handouts, and I did link those here. We didn't use them here, and it was mainly a time thing, but you can certainly take a look at those. So I want to just talk really briefly about the idea of CodeHS being a blended learning platform. So oftentimes there are, there's a lot of ideas about what blended learning is. I think one of the most common is that we think about blended learning as that flipped learning model, where students are going to take that video or that content home with them, and they're going to watch it there, take it in at home, take it in a different place other than their classroom. Then when they come back to their classroom, they're ready to engage in discussion or activities or whatever's going to happen next, but they don't have to spend that time taking in the content in the classroom. So that's definitely one of the most common models. We could get into all the models that are out there. I know I considered myself a blended learning teacher when I put everything online to get these courses out to as many students as I could. So there's certainly a lot of models there. Whatever works for you is great. And I think what we're doing a lot of this year, what I'm hearing from a lot of people is that many of us are starting virtually. And so you may be not seeing your students, or you may not have even seen them yet. But a lot of what we're doing is going to be in a virtual mode. Now, CodeHS is completely online. So all of your content is there. If you didn't want to bring in any third-party apps, you wouldn't have to. It's all right there for you. However, it's still going to be very important to think about, how can I deliver these courses to my students? How can I deliver that content that's going to make the most sense for them? So even though it's blended, even though it's online, we still need to think about things like, how am I going to deliver this? What's going to be the pace? Am I going to have a more self-paced course for my students? And really think about things like pace, place, and the path for student learning. How do I help ensure that all of my students find success? So I talked a little bit more about pacing, and that online learning can be largely self-paced if you choose it to be. The place of their learning, which this year is definitely up in the air because we may not be seeing our students face-to-face. And the path of our learning is important, because if it's student-driven, that path of learning and that path to success is going to be different for every student. So a few things to think about is still, even if we're face-to-face or virtual, how do we mix up online and offline activities? How do we mix up group and individual activities? How do we do things like pair programming, differentiating instruction, and keeping in mind, let's set some goals and expectations for that individual work. It's great that we want to do some collaboration, and it's great that we want to be student-driven and self-paced, but having those goals and expectations are going to be critical regardless of where our students are at. So I want to throw in just a few more ideas for blended instructional strategies. So even though CodeHS provides you with all of the stuff you could possibly want for bringing computer science and programming to your students, we also recognize that you're the teacher, you're the expert. You should have the opportunity to bring your perspective to your classroom and to your content that you're delivering. And so we make it possible for you to really customize your CodeHS course. Now, we don't have time to go over all of these things in this webinar, but I've definitely included some links to this at the end of the webinar as well, or at the end of the slides. So make sure you grab that Start Here doc so you have access to that, and this will be emailed out to everybody too. But you definitely have the ability to add your own content to CodeHS. You can add things like Google Docs, Google Slides. You can add in your own screencast if you'd like. You can also add your own free response questions. I mentioned in the lesson that I was a former English teacher. I put writing in every course I've ever taught, including math, much to many of my students' dismay, but you can add those free response questions directly into CodeHS. There's ways to gamify, and there's ways to communicate with your students as well, directly in the CodeHS platform. And absolutely think about different ways that you can have those collaborative groups. And I love the idea of think, pair, share, whether in no matter what way I can use it, but I love that because it really reduces groupthink. Give your students time to think before they pair up and then eventually share their ideas. And then keep in mind that you can still do things like virtual pair programming and peer feedback. If you are able to do breakout rooms and meet synchronously with your students this year, build in time to do peer feedback or peer programming and those kind of things as well. So I've noticed some of you have been asking about some different resources. I've included a very short list here, but a list to get you thinking. First of all, I just threw in a little bit about those web conferencing apps here for chat and nonverbal reactions and the oh so important breakout rooms. Somebody asked about polling apps, so I threw a few of those in here as well. I love Poll Everywhere. That's one of my favorites and one of the easiest to use. If you use Zoom, you will also have access to polling. Interactive slideshows can be used because you do get the slides. I know I kind of finagled that a little bit when I was a free teacher, but you can definitely do that with Pear Deck and Nearpod. Whiteboarding apps, I threw some of those in there. Assessment apps, oh my gosh, bring in your assessment apps. If you haven't done Kahoot, you got to do Kahoot because it's amazing. And video recording can be another phenomenal way, if you can't use breakout rooms, to do some collaborative work with your students. So what I want to leave you with today is not just think about what's available in CodeHS. Of course, keep that in mind, but think about what routines have you used in your classroom and what can you bring from your classroom to your CodeHS classroom. Whether your classroom is face-to-face or virtual, you can bring those routines into CodeHS, into that blended learning platform, and really meld your routines in with CodeHS. It's meant to all work together. So keep that in mind as you go forward. So I've listed a few more resources here. This is the link to some of the knowledge base articles that we have that might answer some of the questions we have. I know we went through things so fast and focused on blended learning and thinking about those strategies, but you've got some links here and then a direct link to the knowledge base as well. Knowledge base is amazing. There's so many answers there. We do also have the link for our back to school resources, so check that out. More resources about how to get to some other, the Facebook group. If you're not a member of the Facebook group, definitely head out to that and join our Facebook group. some of the other events that we'll be hosting. And our next CodeHS webinar is choosing the right CodeHS course, and that is on Wednesday already. So if you haven't signed up, please jump out to codehs.com/webinar, and you can sign up for that. And I want to thank everybody for joining us today. I'm going to move back to this slide and leave it right here instead of the thank you slide, but so close. I'm just 2 minutes over.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Lori, for an amazing demo lesson, and then talking about teaching with CodeHS in a blended or virtual setting. We shared out a lot of resources, and as promised, I will email the recording for this webinar, all of the resources we've used, the Start Here guide, everything will be emailed out to anybody who registered. So if people weren't here the whole time, they're going to get the whole thing. The only other thing I'm going to add, this is already in the deck, but I just wanted to let you know we do have some workshops coming up that go into more depth with some of our teacher trainers. So they're current CodeHS teachers. They run these workshops and they go into more depth on the platform and their teaching strategies as well. So feel free to, even though they're state specific, if you're not in that state, it's okay. You can still sign up for it, and feel free to join us for those. They are 2 hours long, so there's a little more depth that you get in those sessions, but we are so thankful that you all joined us today, and we hope that this was helpful. And we really wish you the absolute best as you're either starting or have already started your school years. We know that teaching, as both of us as former teachers, we know the hardest job in the world. It's especially hard this year. So we're hoping we're providing you with a lot of resources and strategies to make your jobs easier in this very unique environment right now. So thanks so much for joining us, and thank you for your compliments in the chat area. We appreciate that. So have a good day, and we'll be closing out the room now.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.